The crystal towers of Velthara Prime reached high into the purple sky like giant fingers made of ice. Inside the tallest tower, Princess Nara sat by her window, listening to the sounds of the city below. Her pale blue skin looked almost white in the morning light. Her eyes were clouded and empty, unable to see the beautiful world outside. Her legs, twisted from birth, rested on soft cushions. Nara was 23 years old and had never walked. She had never seen a sunset or her father's face. The other Velthari called her cursed behind closed doors. They said her broken body meant she had an ugly soul. In their world, being perfect on the outside meant being good on the inside. Nara was neither. The Velthari were a proud people. They could speak to each other with their minds by touching hands or faces. This mental connection was everything to them. It was how they fell in love, made friends, and ruled their empire. But no one could touch Nara. Their laws said that her curse might spread through the mental link. So she sat alone while others shared thoughts and feelings she would never know. Down in the palace, servants were busy preparing for important visitors. The humans were coming. Earth had just joined the big group of planets called the Galactic Confederation. The humans had things the galaxy needed: food, metals, and most importantly, soldiers. The Devourers were eating entire star systems, and everyone was afraid. Emperor Dayun, Nara's father, needed this deal with the humans to work. His people were starving and the war was getting worse. But he worried about his daughter. The human visitors would see her at the welcome ceremony. What would they think of a princess who could not even stand? The human ship landed in the palace courtyard with a loud roar. Jinho stepped out and looked around with wide eyes. He was 28 years old and worked as a cultural attaché. While others on his team thought about weapons and battle plans, Jinho studied how alien people lived and thought. He found it amazing that so many different kinds of beings could exist in the same galaxy. The Velthari who met them were tall and beautiful. Their skin was blue like deep ocean water, and their eyes were bright silver. When they greeted each other, they touched foreheads and their eyes would glow softly. Jinho watched, fascinated. He had read about their mind-speaking ability, but seeing it was different. Minseo, the chief diplomat, was all business. She wore a dark blue uniform and spoke in a serious voice. "Remember, we need this alliance," she told her team. "Do not do anything to upset them. Their culture is very different from ours. What seems normal to us might seem rude to them." Jinho nodded, but he was more interested in learning than in being careful. He had studied Velthari culture for months. He knew about their social rules, their religion, and their history. But books could not teach him everything. He wanted to see how they really lived. The welcome ceremony was held in a great hall with walls made of smooth crystal. Hundreds of Velthari nobles stood in perfect rows, their minds linked in a web of silent conversation. Jinho could almost see the connections between them, the way their eyes would flash at the same moment, how they moved together like dancers, who knew every step. Emperor Daun was a massive man with scars across his arms and chest. Velthari warriors earned their rank through combat, and the emperor had fought more battles than anyone. He welcomed the humans with formal words, but Jinho could see worry in his silver eyes. Then Jinho saw her. Princess Nara entered the hall in a floating chair that moved without making sound. Her chair was beautiful, made of the same crystal as the walls, but Jinho barely noticed it. He was looking at her face. Unlike the other Velthari, her eyes did not glow. They were pale and cloudy. Her legs were thin and bent in wrong directions. What struck Jinho most was how alone she seemed. Even surrounded by hundreds of people, she sat apart. The other nobles stood at least 3 steps away from her chair. When the emperor introduced his children, he spoke proudly of Prince Tamian, the strong warrior. When he mentioned Nara, his voice became quiet and formal. "My daughter, Princess Nara," was all he said. Jinho watched the princess throughout the ceremony. She did not participate in the mind-speaking that flowed around her like invisible rivers. She could not touch anyone to join their mental conversations. She simply sat and listened to the spoken words that were meant for the human visitors. But Jin-ho noticed something others might miss. When Emperor Da-un spoke about the war, Nara's head tilted slightly, as if she was paying very close attention. When a noble laughed too loudly, her fingers tapped once on her chair's arm. When the wind changed direction outside, she turned toward the windows before anyone else noticed the new breeze. After the ceremony, Jin-ho tried to ask Min-seo about the princess. Why does she sit apart from everyone? Min-seo looked around, nervously. Do not ask questions about her. I heard the servants talking. They call her cursed. Her body is broken, and they believe that makes her dangerous. No one is allowed to touch her. But she is the emperor's daughter. Does that not matter? Not here, Min-seo said firmly. Their culture values physical perfection. A disabled princess brings shame to the royal family. Just ignore her and focus on our mission. But Jin-ho could not ignore her. That night he stood on his room's balcony and looked up at the tall tower where Princess Nara lived. A single light glowed in her window. He wondered what she was thinking about, alone up there. Did she know how the negotiations were going? Did she care about the war that was killing millions across the galaxy? Most of all, he wondered what it felt like to be surrounded by people who could share thoughts and feelings, but never be able to join them. It would be like being deaf at a concert or blind at a fireworks show. You would know something wonderful was happening all around you, but you could never be part of it. Jin-ho made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow, he would find a way to talk to Princess Nara. Maybe it was against their rules. Maybe it would cause problems for the negotiations. But he could not leave her sitting alone in that tower, forgotten by everyone except the servants who brought her food. The human had no idea that his choice would shake the foundations of two civilizations and change the course of a galactic war. He only knew that someone up in that tower deserved better than being ignored and feared. As he watched, the light in Nara's window went out, but Jin-ho kept looking up at the dark crystal tower, already planning how he would break the most sacred taboo of Velthari society. Jin-ho spent the next morning learning everything he could about Princess Nara. He talked to servants and guards, always being careful not to seem too interested. What he learned made him angry and sad. The princess had been born with a disease that affected many royal Velthari families. The same genes that gave them strong minds sometimes created bodies that did not work right. Most families hid these children away or sent them to live in distant places. Emperor Da-un had kept his daughter close, but the result was the same. She lived like a ghost in her own home. The worst part was the touching rules. Velthari culture was built around mental connections made through physical contact. When they fell in love, they touched palms and shared their deepest thoughts. When they made important decisions, leaders would link minds by holding hands around a table. When children were born, the whole family would touch the baby's head and welcome it into their mental community. Nara had never experienced any of this. The law said that her cursed condition might spread through mental contact. No one knew if this was true, but no one wanted to risk finding out. So she lived surrounded by people who spoke with glowing eyes and touching hands, while she could only listen to the few words they said out loud. Jin-ho's chance came during a garden party 3 days later. The Velthari had built a beautiful space with floating platforms connected by crystal bridges. Exotic plants from dozens of worlds grew in perfect patterns. The noble families gathered here to discuss politics and arrange marriages for their children. The humans were invited to observe and learn about Velthari social customs. Jin-ho watched the mental conversations flowing around him like invisible lightning. Groups of nobles would stand close together, their foreheads almost touching, eyes glowing as they shared complex thoughts at the speed of light. Princess Nara sat on a floating platform by herself. Her chair had been placed where she could hear the spoken conversations meant for the human guests, but far enough away that no one would accidentally touch her. Jin-ho noticed that even the servant robots kept extra distance when they brought her food and drinks. A group of young Velthari nobles stood on a nearby platform. They were Prince Taemin's friends, wealthy and powerful. Jin-ho watched their eyes flash in perfect rhythm and realized they were having a mental conversation. Then he looked at Princess Nara. Her face had gone very still. Her hands were gripping the arms of her chair tightly. Jin-ho did not understand what was happening until he saw one of the young nobles glance at Nara and smile in a cruel way. The others looked too, and their mental conversation became more intense. They were talking about her. In their minds, they were probably saying terrible things, making jokes about the cursed princess. They felt safe because they thought she could not hear them. But Jin-ho saw that she knew exactly what was happening. Princess Nara's breathing had changed. Her blind eyes were pointed toward the group, and her face showed pain that she was trying to hide. The young nobles were enjoying themselves, probably competing to see who could think of the most hurtful things to say about the emperor's disabled daughter. Jin-ho had learned enough Velthari language to get by. Without thinking about the consequences, he walked over to the group of nobles and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Excuse me," he said in their language. "I am trying to learn about your culture. Can you tell me what makes a person noble in Velthari society? Is it the family they are born into, or the actions they choose to take?" The young nobles stopped their mental conversation immediately. Their eyes stopped glowing and they stared at Jin-ho in shock. By speaking out loud, he had forced them to respond the same way. Everyone in the garden could now hear what they said. Prince Taiman was among the group. He was tall and muscular like his father, with ritual scars that showed his rank as a warrior. His face turned dark blue, which Jin-ho knew meant he was embarrassed or angry. "Noble birth creates noble character," Taiman said carefully. "Those born to lead have the strength and wisdom to rule." "I see," Jin-ho replied. "And what about those born with challenges? Does that make them less noble?" "In my culture, we judge people by how they treat those who cannot defend themselves. A person who mocks someone weaker than themselves is considered very low, no matter who their parents are." The garden had gone completely silent. Even the mental conversations had stopped. Everyone was staring at the human who had just insulted a group of high-ranking nobles, including the emperor's son. Taiman's hand moved toward his weapon, but he could not challenge a diplomatic guest. Instead, he said coldly, "You do not understand our ways, human. Some things cannot be changed, and it is foolish to pretend otherwise." "You are right," Jin-ho said. "I do not understand how a civilization advanced enough to travel between stars can still be afraid of a young woman who cannot walk." Before anyone could respond, Jin-ho turned and walked away. He did not look back, but he heard the explosion of angry voices behind him. Both mental and spoken conversations erupted as the nobles tried to process what had just happened. Minseo found Jin-ho an hour later in his room. Her face was red with anger and worry. "Are you insane?" she demanded. "The Velthari Council of Elders wants an explanation for your behavior. Prince Taiman is demanding an apology. You may have destroyed months of careful diplomatic work." Jin-ho sat on his bed, still feeling the anger burning in his chest. They were making fun of her, in their minds where they thought she could not hear them. It was cowardly and cruel. "It does not matter," Minseo shouted. "She is one person. This alliance could save billions of lives. How can you risk so much for someone you do not even know?" Before Jin-ho could answer, there was a soft knock on his door. Minseo opened it to find a young Velthari woman in servant's clothes. Her skin was lighter blue than the nobles, and her eyes did not glow as brightly. "Excuse me," the servant said. "My name is Sunja. I work in Princess Nara's tower. She would like to speak with the human Jin-ho if he is willing." Minseo started to say no, but Jin-ho stood up immediately. "Tell her I will come right now." "Jin-ho, this is exactly the wrong thing to do," Minseo warned. "You are already in trouble for defending her. If you visit her private chambers, it will look like you are planning something romantic or political. The emperor will throw you off the planet." Jin-ho looked at Sunja, who was waiting patiently. "Will I get the princess in trouble if I come to see her?" Sunja smiled sadly. "Sir, the princess is already in as much trouble as any person can be. She has been forgotten by her own people. A few more minutes of scandal will not make her situation worse." That decided it. Jin-ho followed Sunja through the crystal corridors of the palace, up a long spiral staircase to the tower where Princess Nara lived in beautiful isolation. The princess's chambers were larger than Jin-ho expected, with windows that looked out over the entire city. Books in many languages filled the shelves and strange musical instruments sat in corners. Nara was waiting by the largest window, still in her floating chair. "Thank you for coming," she said in perfect standard Galactic, the common language, used by all space-traveling species. Her voice was soft but clear. "And thank you for what you said in the garden." Jin-Ho felt suddenly nervous. "I hope I did not cause problems for you." Nara turned her chair to face him. Her cloudy eyes looked in his direction, and Jin-Ho realized that while she could not see him, she knew exactly where he was standing. "You asked Prince Taemin about noble character," she said. "Would you like to know the answer?" "I heard their mental conversation, every word of it." Jin-Ho's eyes widened. "But I thought you could not connect to their minds." "I cannot," Nara said with a bitter smile. "But I can hear the changes in their breathing when they lie. I can smell the chemicals their bodies make when they feel different emotions. I can hear their heartbeats speed up when they get excited by cruel thoughts. I do not need to touch their minds to know what they are thinking." She gestured toward the window. "They called me a burden that shames the royal family. They said I should have been sent away or killed as a baby. They wondered why their future emperor has to share blood with something as disgusting as me." Jin-Ho felt sick. "I am sorry. No one should have to hear things like that." "Do not apologize," Nara said firmly. "You are the first person in my entire life who stood up for me. You risked your mission and your safety to defend someone you barely know. That tells me more about human character than all the books I have read about your species." As Jin-Ho looked around her rooms, he began to understand something important. Princess Nara was not just a sad, forgotten invalid. She was incredibly smart and well-educated. She spoke multiple languages and had clearly studied many subjects. Her isolation had not made her weak. It had made her observant and strong in ways that no one else recognized. "I would like to learn more about humans," Nara said quietly. "If you are willing to visit again, I would like to hear about your world and your people. Sunja tells me that humans form bonds without mental connections. I find that very interesting." Jin-Ho smiled. "I would be honored to tell you about Earth. And I would like to learn more about you if that is acceptable." For the first time since he had seen her, Princess Nara smiled back. It transformed her entire face, making her look less like a tragic figure, and over the next week, Jin-Ho visited Princess Nara every evening. He told Min-Seo that he was researching Velthari culture, which was technically true. But his real purpose was getting to know the fascinating woman who lived alone in the crystal tower. Jin-Ho brought her things from Earth that she had never experienced. He played recordings of human music, rock songs with heavy drums, classical pieces with soaring violins, and folk songs with simple melodies. Nara listened with complete attention, her head tilted as she absorbed every note. "Your music is so different," she said after hearing a jazz recording. "Velthari music is made for mental sharing. When we hear it, we connect our minds and experience the same emotions together. But human music seems designed to make each person feel something personal and unique." Jin-Ho had never thought about it that way. "I suppose that makes sense. We cannot share thoughts, so our art is about individual experience." He also brought her recordings of Earth's natural sounds, ocean waves, thunderstorms, bird songs, and wind through forests. Nara had never heard anything like them. Velthara Prime was a world of crystal cities and metal plains. The idea of vast waters and living trees amazed her. "Describe the color green to me," she asked one evening. Jin-Ho thought carefully. Velthari shared colors through mental connections, experiencing them directly in each other's minds. How could he explain color to someone who had never seen? "Green is peaceful," he said slowly. "It is the color of life and growth. When humans see green, we feel calm and safe. It reminds us of food and health and home." Nara smiled. "That is a very human way to describe color. You connect it to emotions and survival rather than just information." Their conversations revealed Nara's incredible intelligence. Despite being isolated from normal Velthari society, She understood politics and strategy better than many nobles. She had spent years listening to court meetings from hidden places, learning about trade agreements and military plans. "The war against the Devourers is going worse than your diplomats realize," she told Jin-Ho one night. "My father meets with his generals every morning. I listen from the air vents above his office. The Devourers have destroyed 3 more colony worlds in the past month." Jin-Ho felt a chill. The human delegation had not been told about those losses. "Are you certain?" "I am certain," Nara said. "I also know that several noble families are planning to challenge my father's rule. They think he is weak for working with aliens instead of fighting alone. There will be trouble soon." Jin-Ho realized that Nara might be the most valuable source of intelligence on the entire planet. Her disability had made her invisible, allowing her to overhear conversations that were meant to be secret. Her enhanced hearing and careful mind had turned her into an unintentional spy. Hyunwoo, the human military advisor, discovered Jin-Ho's meetings by accident. He was walking through the palace late one night when he saw Jin-Ho coming down from Nara's tower. The next morning, Hyunwoo confronted him. "Are you completely stupid?" Hyunwoo demanded. "The Velthari already think we are barbarians. Now you are visiting their cursed princess like some kind of romantic fool. Minseo is ready to send you back to Earth in disgrace." Jin-Ho tried to explain, but Hyunwoo would not listen. Then Jin-Ho mentioned what Nara had told him about the lost colony worlds and the planned coup. Hyunwoo's attitude changed immediately. "She knows about military losses that we have not been told about, and she predicted a political uprising." "She knows everything that happens in this palace," Jin-Ho said. "Her father and the other nobles ignore her, so they speak freely around her. But she understands what she hears better than most of them do." That evening, Hyunwoo joined Jin-Ho for his visit to Nara's tower. The military advisor was nervous about meeting the princess, but Nara put him at ease with her direct way of speaking. "You want to know about the coup attempt," she said without introduction. "It will happen in 3 days, during the festival of Crystal Light. House Mordek has been meeting secretly for weeks. They plan to accuse my father of weakness and demand new leadership." Hyunwoo leaned forward. "How can you be so sure about the timing?" "I listen to their heartbeats when they speak in council meetings," Nara explained. "Prince Dae-hyun of House Mordek has been nervous for days, but yesterday his heart rate became steady and determined. That means they have made their final decision." She was right about everything. 3 days later, during the most important festival of the Veltari year, armed warriors from House Mordek surrounded the palace. Prince Dae-hyun declared that Emperor Da-yun had dishonored their people by working with inferior alien species. But the emperor was ready. Using Nara's intelligence, Hyunwoo had helped plan defensive strategies. Loyal guards were in position, and the coup was stopped before it could truly begin. Prince Dae-hyun and his followers were arrested, and the alliance negotiations continued. After the crisis ended, Hyunwoo looked at Nara with new respect. "You may have saved both of our civilizations," he told her. "That intelligence prevented a civil war that would have destroyed any chance of fighting the Devourers together." Nara seemed pleased, but not surprised. "I have always paid attention to what happens around me. It is just that no one ever asked for my opinion before." That night, Jin-Ho made a decision that had been growing in his mind for days. He had fallen in love with Nara, not just her intelligence and strength, but her kindness and humor. She made him laugh with observations about human behavior that were both accurate and gentle. She listened to his problems and gave advice that was always thoughtful and wise. More importantly, he saw how lonely she was. Not just isolated from others, but hungry for connection and understanding. The Velthari would never accept her because she could not join their mental bonds. But
humans formed relationships differently, through shared experiences, emotional intimacy, and mutual respect.
"Nara," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something important." She turned toward him, her cloudy eyes somehow knowing that this was a serious moment. In human culture, we have a bond called marriage. It is not based on mental connection like Velthari bonds. Instead, it is a promise to share our lives, to support each other, and to face challenges together. It is about choosing to love someone every day, not just feeling it in the moment. Nara was very still. Why are you telling me this? Jinho took a deep breath. Because I would like to ask if you would consider forming such a bond with me. I know it would be complicated. I know it might cause problems for both our peoples. But I also know that I have never met anyone who understands me the way you do. For a long moment, Nara said nothing. Then tears began running down her blue cheeks. Do you understand what you are asking? I am cursed by my own people. I cannot walk, I cannot see, and I cannot share the mental bonds that define Velthari civilization. You would be giving up any chance of a normal life. Jinho moved closer to her chair. Nara, you are the strongest, smartest, and most interesting person I have ever met. You see things that others miss. You understand politics and people better than trained diplomats. You have spent your whole life being told that you are broken, but I think you are perfect exactly as you are. He reached out his hand, palm up, in the human gesture of offering. I am not asking you to be someone else. I am asking if you want to discover what kind of bond two different people can build together. Nara looked down at his hand. In Velthari, culture touching meant mental connection and shared thoughts. For her, it had always meant rejection and fear, but Jinho was offering something different. Physical contact without the burden of telepathic expectations. Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand in his. Her skin was cool and soft. No mental connection formed, because neither of them expected one. Instead, there was something simpler and more profound, the basic human comfort of touch freely given and received. Yes, Nara whispered. I would like to try building that kind of bond with you. As they held hands in the crystal tower, both of them knew that their decision would shake the foundations of two civilizations. But at that moment, they only cared about the connection they had found with each other, different from anything either culture had experienced, but real and strong in its own unique way. The news of Jinho and Nara's engagement spread through both the human delegation and the Velthari court like wildfire. The reactions were immediate and intense. Mincio was furious. She paced back and forth in Jinho's room, her hands clenched into fists. Have you lost your mind completely? This is not some romantic story, Jinho. This is real politics with real consequences. The Velthari think their princess is cursed. Now they will think we are either fools or that we are trying to insult them. Unji, the human cultural specialist, was more worried than angry. Jinho, I care about you, but this marriage could destroy your career and maybe your life. How will you live on a world where everyone sees your wife as a shameful mistake? How will she handle being rejected by both cultures? But the human reactions were nothing compared to the chaos in the Velthari court. Many nobles were horrified that an alien would dare to touch their cursed princess. Others were confused about how a bond could exist without mental connection. A few wondered if this was some kind of human trick to gain political advantage. Emperor Da-un called Jinho to a private meeting the day after the engagement was announced. The emperor's office was carved from a single massive crystal, with walls that seemed to glow from within. Da-un sat behind a desk made of polished metal, his scarred hands folded as he studied the human who wanted to marry his daughter. Explain, to me, the emperor said quietly, how you can love someone you cannot mentally bond with. Jinho had been thinking about this question since he first held Nara's hand. Your Majesty, humans form bonds through shared experiences and emotional connection. We learn to understand each other by talking, spending time together, and observing how we each react to different situations. It takes longer than mental bonding, but it can be just as strong. But without direct access to her thoughts, how do you know her true character? How do you know she will not deceive you or change her mind? I trust her, Jinho said simply. Trust is something humans build over time, through many small actions that prove a person's goodness. Princess Nara has shown me her intelligence, her kindness, and her strength. I choose to believe in those qualities. Da-un was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, My daughter has been a source of pain for me since the day she was born. Not because I do not love her, but because I could not protect her from the cruelty of our society. I have watched her grow into a remarkable woman. knowing that no Velthari male would ever accept her as a partner. He looked directly at Jinho. If you are sincere in your feelings, then you offer her something I never could, a chance at happiness. But if you are using her for political gain, or if you abandon her when the novelty wears off, I will personally make sure you regret it for the rest of your short life. The conversation with Prince Taimin was more difficult. Nara's younger brother was a traditional Velthari warrior who believed strongly in their cultural values. He found Jinho in the palace gardens and confronted him directly. "You have no idea what you are doing," Taimin said angrily. "Nara may seem fascinating to you now, but you do not understand what life with her will be like. She cannot participate in our most basic social activities. She will never be able to share thoughts and feelings the way Velthari couples do. You will spend your entire marriage trying to explain things to her that she can never truly understand." Jinho stayed calm, though Taimin's words stung. "Your sister understands more than you give her credit for. She has insights about politics and people that would surprise you if you ever took time to listen to her." "Insights?" Taimin laughed bitterly. "She sits in her tower listening to conversations and imagining that she understands what is happening. But real understanding comes from participation, from being part of the mental connections that bind our society together." "Then explain to me how she predicted the House Mordek coup attempt," Jinho said quietly. Taimin stopped laughing. "What are you talking about?" Jinho told him about Nara's intelligence gathering and how her information had helped prevent the civil war. Taimin listened with growing amazement and finally something that looked like respect. She really knew about the coup in advance?" Taimin asked. "She knows about everything that happens in this palace," Jinho replied. "Your people have ignored her for so long that you forgot she was listening. But she has been paying attention to every word, every gesture, every political move for her entire life." For the first time, Taimin seemed to consider that his sister might be more than just a tragic burden on their family. The hardest part was planning the wedding ceremony. Velthari bonding rituals were entirely based on mental connection. The Mai couple would touch palms while their families formed a circle around them, all minds linked together in a web of shared consciousness. The two people getting married would literally become part of each other's thoughts, sharing memories and emotions in a union that was both physical and mental. None of this was possible for Jinho and Nara. Jinho had no telepathic abilities, and Nara was forbidden from mental contact even if she wanted to try it. Nara solved the problem with typical creativity. "We will create our own ceremony," she told Jinho. "We will take the symbolic elements of Velthari bonding and combine them with human marriage traditions. We will show both cultures that love can take many different forms." They designed a ceremony that was unlike anything either species had seen before. Instead of mental connection, they would speak their vows out loud so that everyone could hear their promises to each other. Instead of sharing thoughts, they would exchange written letters that described their hopes and dreams for their life together. The most meaningful part was Nara's idea to include music from both worlds. Human musicians would play earth melodies, while Velthari singers provided harmonies that their people could experience both mentally and physically. It would be a union of different ways of experiencing beauty. The wedding day arrived with great ceremony and even greater tension. Representatives from dozens of alien species had come to witness this unprecedented union. Some were curious, others skeptical, and a few were openly hostile to the idea of cross-species marriage. Nara wore a dress made of crystal fibers that caught the light and sent rainbows dancing across the walls. Her hair was decorated with flowers from Earth that Jinho had specially imported. For the first time in her life, she looked truly beautiful in the eyes of her own people. Jinho wore formal human diplomatic clothes, but with Velthari ceremonial scarves that showed his acceptance into their culture. His hands shook slightly as he stood at the altar, not from nervousness about marrying Nara, but from worry about whether their two peoples would accept this new kind of union. Emperor Daun performed the ceremony, speaking words that had been carefully crafted to honor both human and Velthari traditions. When he asked Nara and Jinho to state their vows, their voices carried clearly through the great hall. "I promise to be your partner in all things," Nara said. Her cloudy eyes turned toward Jinho's voice. I cannot share your thoughts, but I will listen to your words. I cannot see your face, but I will learn to recognize your heart. I choose to build a life with you that is different from anything our peoples have known before. Jinho's voice was strong and clear. I promise to discover new ways of loving that do not require mental connection. I promise to be patient when our different cultures cause confusion. Most of all, I promise to value you for exactly who you are, not for who either of our societies thinks you should be. When they joined hands at the end of the ceremony, something unexpected happened. The watching crowd, both human and Velthari, fell completely silent. For a moment, everyone wondered if the marriage would truly work. Then Nara smiled, and Jinho smiled back. And somehow the simple human gesture of happiness made more sense than any telepathic bond could have. During the celebration that followed, something remarkable occurred. Several young Velthari nobles approached Nara and Jinho to congratulate them. These were not the same people who had mocked her in the garden. They seemed genuinely curious about this new kind of relationship. How do you know what your husband is thinking if you cannot connect minds? Asked a young woman named Yeojin. Nara tilted her head thoughtfully. I listen to how his voice changes when he speaks about different subjects. I notice how his breathing becomes deeper when he is relaxed and faster when he is excited. I pay attention to the words he chooses and the stories he tells. It takes longer than mental bonding, but it teaches me to understand him in a different way. Some of the older nobles still disapproved, but the younger generation seemed fascinated by the idea of building relationships through observation and time, rather than instant mental connection. Prince Taemin stood at the edge of the celebration, watching his sister with new eyes. For the first time in his life, he saw Nara not as a burden or embarrassment, but as a brave woman who had found her own path to happiness. When the formal ceremony ended, he approached the newly married couple. Sister, he said formally, I owe you an apology. I have spent years thinking you were incomplete because you could not do what other Velthari do. But today I see that you have found completeness in a different way. Nara reached out toward her brother's voice. Taemin, you have always been kind. The Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 200 ships, each one the size of a small moon, appeared at the edge of the Velthara system. Their hulls were black and twisted, grown rather than built, and they pulsed with an alien energy that made space itself seem to bend around them. On Velthara Prime, every alarm in the city was screaming. The combined human and Velthari fleet rushed to form defensive positions, but everyone knew they were badly outnumbered. The Devourers had consumed entire civilizations to build this armada. This was not just a battle. It was potentially the end of both species. In the command center, Princess Nara sat in her floating chair surrounded by dozens of communication devices. Human radio equipment mixed with Velthari quantum transmitters, creating a web of technology that had never been tried before. Thin wires connected to small speakers were placed near her ears, allowing her to monitor multiple channels simultaneously. Jinho stood beside his wife, serving as her translator and assistant. He would relay her orders to the human ships whose crews did not speak Velthari, while Taemin handled communications with their own forces. It was the first time the royal siblings had worked together, and the trust between them was still new and fragile. Enemy fleet is beginning attack formation, reported Admiral Bora from the flagship. They are spreading out to surround our defensive positions. Through her enhanced hearing, Nara could detect subtle variations in the background noise of each radio channel. Engine sounds, weapons charging, even the breathing patterns of nervous ship captains. All of this information flowed into her consciousness simultaneously. The Devourers are using a pincer movement, she announced calmly. Their main force will attack our center while smaller groups try to circle behind us. Admiral Bora, pull back your heavy cruisers and let them think they are succeeding. Princess, if we retreat now, they will break through our lines. Bora protested. Trust me, Nara said firmly. I can hear something you cannot. Their ships are not communicating with each other the way they should. They expect us to use telepathic coordination, so they are jamming those frequencies. But they are not prepared for our new command structure. Wu Jin, the human admiral, was monitoring the battle from his own flagship. Nara, our sensors show massive psychic interference from the enemy ships. How are you not affected? Nara smiled grimly. Because I have never used psychic connections in my life. Their jamming technology is designed to disrupt telepathic species. To me, it is just background noise. The battle began with thunderous explosions as the Devourer fleet opened fire. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Beams of pure destruction that could dissolve matter at the molecular level. Several Velthari ships disappeared in the first few minutes, simply ceasing to exist as the Devourer weapons touched them. Traditional fleet coordination would have collapsed under such assault. Telepathic commanders would have been overwhelmed by psychic feedback from dying crew members, leaving the fleet scattered and helpless. But Nara remained perfectly calm, her enhanced senses allowing her to process information faster than any computer. Captain Kyung-soo, your ship is drifting into a crossfire zone. Turn 15 degrees to port and increase speed, she commanded into one radio channel. Admiral Wu Jin, the enemy is concentrating fire on our left flank. Move your destroyers. To provide cover, she said into another. Taemin, tell the 3rd Squadron to prepare for a flanking maneuver. I will guide them through the enemy formation, she instructed her brother. What made Nara's coordination so effective was not just her ability to process multiple information streams, but her lifetime of listening to voices and understanding the emotions behind them. She could hear when a captain was about to panic and needed encouragement. She could detect when someone was lying about their ship's damage status. She could sense the exact moment when enemy formations began to falter. The Devourers are getting confused, she announced after an hour of intense fighting. They keep expecting our fleet to break apart when their psychic jamming increases, but we are holding together. They do not understand how we are coordinating. Without telepathy. Jinho watched his wife with amazement and pride. The woman who had been considered cursed and useless by her own people was now directing the greatest space battle in galactic history. Her supposed weaknesses had become incredible strengths. But the Devourers were not defeated yet. Their fleet commander, a massive bioship the size of a space station, began moving toward the planet. If it reached Velthara Prime, it could consume the entire world in a matter of hours. All ships concentrate fire on the command vessel, Admiral Bora ordered. No, wait, Nara said quickly. I can hear something strange in their communication patterns. The command ship is not just directing the battle, it is controlling the other ships directly. If we can disrupt that connection, their entire fleet will become confused. How do we disrupt a bioship's nervous system? Wu Jin asked. Nara was quiet for a moment, listening to the subtle audio patterns coming from the enemy fleet. Then her eyes widened with understanding. The command ship is using harmonic frequencies to control the others. It is like a massive, musical instrument playing notes that the other ships respond to. If we can generate the right counter frequency, we can break their coordination. That is impossible, Admiral Bora protested. Our weapons are not designed for harmonic warfare. Our weapons are not, Nara agreed. But our ship's engines are. Every engine produces sound waves as it operates. If we can coordinate the engine, frequencies of our entire fleet, we can create a counter-harmonic that will disrupt their command system. It was the most insane battle plan anyone had ever heard. Using spaceship engines as musical instruments to fight a biomechanical enemy was beyond anything in military textbooks. But Nara's understanding of sound and harmony gave her insights that no one else possessed. This is Admiral Wu Jin to all ships, the human commander announced. Prepare for synchronized engine harmonics on Princess Nara's command. I know, this sounds crazy, but trust the princess. She has not been wrong yet. Nara closed her eyes and listened to the symphony of sounds flowing through her communication channels. Engine frequencies, weapons fire, hull stress patterns, even the heartbeats of crew members. It all became part of a massive audio map in her mind. Begin harmonic sequence in 3, 2, 1. Now, she commanded. Across the battlefield, nearly 300 ships adjusted their engine outputs to match Nara's calculations. The combined frequency output created a sound wave so powerful it could be felt across light years of space. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and devastating. Their bioships began shuddering and writhing as the counter-harmonic disrupted their internal coordination systems. The massive command vessel let out a sound like a dying wail that echoed through space. Without central control, the Devourer ships began attacking each other, their primitive programming unable to distinguish friend from enemy. Within minutes, the greatest invasion fleet in galactic history was tearing itself apart. "Impossible," Admiral Bo-Ra whispered as he watched the enemy fleet destroy itself. "How did you know that would work?" Nara opened her eyes and smiled. "Because I have spent my entire life learning to understand things through sound instead of sight. I could hear the patterns in their communication that others missed. Sometimes what seems like a weakness can become the greatest strength." The victory celebration lasted for days. Princess Nara was hailed as the savior of two civilizations, and her tactical innovations became standard doctrine for anti-devourer warfare throughout the galaxy. Other species sent delegations to learn about her methods, and soon fleets across known space were using audio-based coordination systems. But the most important change was in how the Velthari viewed their princess. No longer was she seen as cursed or broken. She had proven that different abilities could be just as valuable as traditional ones. Young Velthari with disabilities began to be seen as potentially gifted, rather than automatically inferior. Nara and Jin Ho established an academy on Velthara Prime, where beings from different species could learn to form relationships across biological and cultural barriers. Students came from across the galaxy to study new forms of communication and cooperation. "You changed everything," Jin Ho told his wife one evening as they sat in their apartment overlooking the Crystal City. Nara leaned against his shoulder, listening to the sounds of the bustling metropolis below. "We changed everything," she corrected. "You showed me that I did not have to accept other people's limitations on my life. Together, we proved that love and understanding can exist in forms that no one has imagined before." 5 years later, Princess Nara addressed the Galactic Confederation Council as their newly appointed Director of Interspecies Relations. Her words, translated by Jinho into dozens of languages, outlined new protocols for integrating species with different communication methods into the galactic community. "For too long we have assumed that difference means deficiency," she told the assembled representatives. "But the war against the Devourers taught us that diversity of abilities makes us stronger, not weaker. Every species, every individual, has unique capabilities that can benefit the whole." As she spoke,